You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. This show is dedicated to those who live and love from the heart in infinite ways. In today's episode, we will discuss, share, gain insights, and get clarity on the wisdom and teachings of the mystic and seer Almin, as well as discover more about the miraculous healing modality called Belvaspata. Your host for this show is Paul.
And welcome to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. This is our first episode for 2018. Welcome to the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. What an incredible month we've already had with so much happening. It seems ascension processes, awareness, everything's expanding and growing. Last year was very, very different for most of us. This year, Almin tells us that we're at a crossroads in our evolution. What we choose will either create a graceful transition or a great loss of life as a purification amongst humanity. The tablets indicate what we would have missed so that we can instead choose a graceful journey. And that's the Seer Almin. More about the tablets in a while. In the meantime, here's Diane.
Welcome to all our listeners to our first radio show of 2018. As we get together to share, to reveal, and to dissolve, I am acutely aware of the role of the mind and its responsibility of keeping the ego, the identity, alive and well. In the same way, I think, perhaps, as the cancer cell refuses to take a vacation, refuses to step down, and thus then inevitably kills their host, so the ego, the identity, breathed life into by the mind, refuses to give up the identity and ultimately keeps the real self, that being that we know intimately, from surfacing and shining. Over the last few months, I seem to have fallen in love with that being. And as that love affair has grown, I've become aware of that little pesky intruder, the mind. It seems that the mind needs to reason, and this it does well. It seems that the mind needs to be practical, and this it does well. The mind fulfills the need and the desire for creativity, and this it does beautifully. However, we can't consult the mind to tell us who we really are. The mind feeds that illusory ego with memories, with desires, with fears and anxieties. And this is not who we are. This is the great, bright and shining lie. This person that we think we are is merely a construct of the mind. It invades every moment, and this psychological mind brings suffering and keeps us bound in time. This is not who we are. Our being, our presence, that which we may call our God self, is really the truth of who we are. We have never in truth been born, and we have never come to an end. And for this reason, and really this is very clear for me at the moment, and that is that there is no journey to enlightenment. There is no process. This beloved, the infinite, has been inside us all along. So in closing, we can say that the infinite has been so close. Indeed, there is no distance at all. The mind would have us believe that we are separated from, we are distanced from. But this is not the case. So when Paul speaks tonight about minding the gap, it is only the mind that knows of gaps and distance and chasms, for our being knows only oneness. I remember thinking a couple of years ago that we were dots of God. So if you can imagine a circle and a dot inside of it, that's how I would visually see myself, the dot being God and the rest being me. Then that changed and I saw the circle with the dot inside where I was the dot and the rest was God. But somehow I see now that everything is in fact God. There is no dot of either. Let's talk about this. Let's reflect on this. Good night, all.
You're back in studio. I'm your host, Paul. Today's show is called Mind the Gap on Radio Belvaspatar, broadcasting out of Johannesburg worldwide. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Welcome to our first show of the new year. Almin tells us that in the dream within the dream, we believe ourselves to be separate from the world around us. As we awaken from the dream of duality, we realize that we are part of the interconnectedness of all life. And as we evolve into the white light stages of full awakening, we realize that we are our environment, that the only being that we can encounter is ourself. The author and healer Margaret Atwood, in her book The Handmaid's Tale, tells us, what I need is perspective. The illusion of depth created by a frame, the arrangement of shapes on a flat surface. Perspective is necessary. Otherwise, there are only two dimensions. Otherwise, you live with your face squashed up against a wall and everything a huge foreground of details, of close-ups, of hair, the weave of the bedset, the molecules on our face. Your own skin like a map, a diagram of futility, crisscrossed with tiny roads that lead nowhere. Otherwise, you live in the moment, which is not where I want to be. And that's tonight's show, really. We're talking about minding the gap. We're going to be discussing aspects of moving into different timelines. I have some questions around that. Hopefully you can share with us your particular experience and perspectives of all of that. But we have certainly entered 2018 with a massive shift of cosmic frequency coming in, and many of us are responding to it in various ways according to our perspective. Many of us are feeling stuck and unsure how to find the momentum to move forward. Many of you have been sharing with us here, with myself and Nico, about those particular processes. And it's really just for us an absolute gift to be able to have all of you share that with us bit by bit and put it together piece by piece. And that's what our radio show is all about. For the next year, we're going to be working with each one of you. We're going to be detailing these particular processes week by week, sharing from the heart, sharing from this moment, and just putting it all together so that we can clearly understand where we are going within ourselves and what it is perhaps that we could bring into action, into being for the next week ahead. So, when we're working towards a goal or building a dream, as many of us are, well, all of us are. Sometimes we find ourselves unable to see the physical manifestation of all our hard work. And when this happens, it's easy and extremely common to start feeling like your wheels are just spinning in place and then we're going nowhere. Sound familiar to you? Well, sometimes it does feel like we've hit a wall and we can't move forward. And sometimes all we need to do is switch up our routine and get going again and do things in a completely different way so that our perspective shifts. I've really been pondering on this in the last few days and, coming out of some of the aspects of last year where I think towards the end of last year on the show, we were discussing the feeling that was going on within the abdominal area, the absolute sense of impending drama, trauma, of absolute just losing everything. There was absolute terror going on within many of us. And then that seems to have shifted over the December period. And as we've been working into this year of working with the magic of white light and stepping into completely different zones of being, things have started to shift. And I find for myself that is now lifting away from me. I'm not so stuck in those particular processes, but I'm recognizing where I was stuck, but I'm also not letting that hold me back. And I know we've just, Nick and I have suddenly started off with a burst of energy, but we're also giving ourselves time to actually rest where we need to. Have you seen that within yourself? You have incredible energy for a short while, and then you run out of it. There's nothing left, and so you need to rest. These are all gifts that we need to align with and work with and really stop struggling against the old programs and beliefs that are holding us back. Because feeling stuck really creates its own comfort zone. It creates its own company. It's jail. For us, when we talk about Mind the Gap, we're talking about timelines. This year, Almin has been discussing it. She's been talking about the DNA shifts within humanity and how all that is falling away. And I'm feeling that we are merging into different timelines. And tonight's show, we'll be discussing some of that. And many of you have posted aspects of that. So we'll be taking some of the mainstream aspects and discussing that as we're going along. For me, there's an identity gap. Many of us are stuck in an identity gap, in roles, in belief systems, in feeling that this is the way it should be. And is it like that? Well, we're going to have to ask ourselves. So the first half of the show, we're focusing a little bit on these aspects of it. And then what we're going to be doing is looking at the other perspective that comes into it of what we've actually achieved. And I find that incredibly inspiring to be able to share with you. So think about this. What is the identity that you currently hold? That's the question for tonight's show. Is it an identity where you are working from the mind, thinking your way through things? We know that is one particular aspect of ascension on a logical level. For me, my insights are saying to me most of that is actually gone. We cannot work through that. We can only work from that state of inspiration, which has replaced thought and replaced the emotions of the heart. That we're working from the high heart right now, and the Seer Almin teaches about it. And of course, a lot of this is coming now through the tablets of fire, and we'll be discussing that. But let's go to some music. We've got Darren Criss, and a beautiful song, I think very appropriate from where we're at tonight. It's called Going Nowhere.
Can't move forward. I'm so much colder than I've been since the October when we were closer, and it was love that we were in. If I was a smarter man, I'd understand I'm alone when I look in the mirror. You said our goodbyes then, but I close my eyes and you're still here. I'm going nowhere, just getting older, watching the whole world pass me by. Against better reason, I take memories and sit back and repeat them every night. And maybe I stay too long over play this song. I don't mind, I'm inclined to agree. If I'm going nowhere, then there is nowhere I'd rather be. I wonder if she remembers anything the way that I do her. Wonder if pre-September ever was the way over. Still I look forward to the fall. Another October. I'm sorry, I know you're expecting a less than sober call. And maybe you're right, I'm scared it might go nowhere. And it's making it hard to believe that I'm going nowhere. And there is nowhere I'd rather be. If you could just show where I can go nowhere, that's where I'll be.
You're back with myself, Paul. Nico is hosting us on the sound desk outside the studio today, and we are talking about Mind the Gap, really the gap that exists between the process as we move into different timelines, as we move into different processes, and everything begins to shift in our lives, often causing us to want to hold on to things out of fear or uncertainty, insecurities about the need for comfort zones, etc., etc. Hopefully you are understanding where I'm going at in terms of this particular conversation this evening. I'm finding it very interesting that there's just a few minutes before we began tonight's broadcast, the actual microphone broke off our stand. So now I'm sitting here like a TV presenter looking out over the horse races or radio presenter, and I've got it held in my hand and trying to work through everything. So we all have to adapt, feel sorry or not for ourselves, but we all have to really work with what we've got at this moment in time. Very, very fortunate for us all to have this here, Almeen, and the teachings that are going on. And a reminder that everything that you experience is also part of the cosmic unfolding, because we are, as humanity, the microcosm of the macrocosm. And as those two also begin to merge their processes together, we will begin to lose our identities. It is just fascinating for me to watch how everybody jumped back into the new year as if nothing had really happened. But there are most definitely miracles unfolding within all of us, because I feel different. It's not because we've had a short holiday. It's not because of anything. I feel different. I'm approaching things differently, and sometimes incredibly strong at stuff, but also incredibly compassionate at the same time. And it seems to me that gap is definitely narrowing as we go along. So you'll remember just a little while ago, time frame's not good for me as usual, but a while ago Almeen spoke about traveling through time, was it 300 years into the future, and she came back from that point with an amazing amount of information, amazing amount of instruction, of knowledge for us to actually work with, to bring that experience back. But she said that her teachings were still intact 300 years down the line, that they were still functioning and valid. And I think that's absolutely incredible. Now I'm aware and I'm feeling that we are crossing into different timelines. The timelines are merging together as we step into this sense of oneness, as we step into a time frame where duality is dissolving and we are resolving so many different issues around us. We are finding that these different fragmented aspects of self are now all starting to merge together into a sense of wholeness. And that itself is its own journey and its own process to actually work through. It takes a lot of processing and understanding as we allow it all to happen. But then I'm also thinking along the way, well, that's fine in terms of Almeen's teachings being valid there, and without a sense of attachment around it. I just want to say, will that statement still be valid? Are they strong enough to withstand all these processes? Other timelines start to merge together. And we must understand, for me, it's not one timeline stronger than another. It's all these different fragmented aspects of self. And I'm feeling that very, very much so is that the inner family within the self, the inner personalities, the inner warrior, the inner parent, the inner child, the sage, and the subcategories that go on with all of that, that each one was perhaps living in its own timeline and having different experiences. And this is why we battled so much that is going on. But for me, I can enjoy myself. I can be the inner child at this moment. I can also be the warrior. I can be the sage. It seems to be that not one of them is any longer really creating a state where, I'm headstrong in any of those particular processes. So is it possible that those timelines were all running as a fragmented self? And now as we merge them together, one is not better or stronger or weaker than the other. So we can't say one is folding into the other, or we can say they're all folding in together. It's an unfolding of newness that's coming in as they start to work in. And then as Almin begins to discuss these aspects of human DNA, I'm feeling that the human DNA will actually completely fall away and be replaced by something else, because that DNA itself carried its own memories, carried its own consciousness, carried its own, let's say, exponential experiences which were carried down the line with us, because that's what DNA does. It creates form, it creates shape, it creates experiences and awareness and understanding and reactions and programming and all these kind of things. So let's mind the gap at this moment in time and understand is that we are certainly moving from the platform into a moving train. And I think somebody, I'm not sure it was, up on Facebook this week said, it's a little bit like standing in a house in a full storm and the doors are flinging open and the windows are flinging open and you're trying to close them and you're trying to stay protected and in love and all of that, but the storm is still raging outside. And my feeling on that is yes, absolutely, and we are learning to stand in the middle of the storm and stand strong. And that's been my experience along the way. But, many, many things going on for us and having to work on things, but there's an unfolding happening. And for me, a sense of trust has developed over this last little while. And I know within myself, I trust it, but there's that 99% aspect of it, and then there's still that little bit of the old programming comes in. But I think as the timelines learn to merge, as our DNA begins to shift, we are going to be discovering for ourselves that we're in a much stronger state of being. This is the year of living in unfathomable experiences, letting the being just experience what is absolutely never going to be understood. And yet I know by the end of the year we'll be understanding things on a much deeper level, and simply because we have experienced them, and all it takes is for us to stand in this moment and allow ourselves all to do that. So think about this. If you were to close your eyes for a few minutes and just think about where you are at today, all the experiences that you've had, and if we were to say do a little bit of a regression process here, what would your past self think about where you are at or who you are today? It would look up to it, correct? It has to, because that's what a child does. It looks up to the elder ones as examples, as icons, as mentors, and moving on. We look at our country in South Africa, just how things are shifting at a massive rate now politically, and how suddenly there's this energy in the air of we can do this, we can make change, we can do all of that. So congratulations, South Africa. But remember, South Africa itself is a microcosm of the rest, and everybody else's processes are also unfolding. We are all one on this journey towards, shall we say, complete ascension. What's going to happen after that? Who knows? I don't particularly care about it. My experience is just saying to me, stand in the moment, trust yourself fully, and trust that you're an expression of the infinite and that you're learning to express more and more of the self. A lot of us absolutely exhausted a lot of the time, a lot of us great energy a lot of the time, mix and match, but these experiences are all there at any one particular time. Kiara Young of the Blazing Heart Foundation has the most beautiful way of explaining things in such an open, authentic, and transparent way. And I'm just going to read out a few things that she's been saying this week. So if you haven't read it and you're not part of it, you can join up to her on Facebook. But here we are. We're just explaining where it fits into this whole paradigm of mind the gap. She says that whenever life expands in any major way, either through an inevitable process of evolution and development, or through our very deliberate choice to step up in a new way and reach for more expanded horizons, the entire way in which we live and do life on an ordinary day-to-day basis has to expand too, to be able to keep up and match what is emerging as our new and more elaborate expression. Anything that we try to hold on to as pertaining to the previous level will hold us up profoundly and will definitely end up being a source of angst and frustration. I've been so surprised tonight to realize what has been bothering me for a few days now. because I recognize that the things I need to let go of are things that I've loved, that have been like old familiar friends, but are thoroughly and absolutely binding me to a lower order of being right now. Life is pushing me to expand in an unprecedented way, which means I need to let go of several modes of being that were perfectly applicable only just a few weeks ago, but are now hindering my further expansion. And it feels like an almost bittersweet sort of process, mingled with a little bit of fear. I've struggled at many points throughout this journey of feeling absolutely compelled to do the work that I'm doing now. And I've often said that I literally don't have a choice. I have to do this. But with a sense of having to do all these things on a day-to-day basis, as if there is never any reprieve. One task piles on top of another, and it never stops. And doing all the things comprises of so many tiny and not so tiny activities that take up an absolute massive amount of time and energy, and which I imagine it's hard for somebody who's not doing this to conceive of. But it has come time for me now to examine to a whole new depth how much of the things are coming from limiting patterns of obligation and duty, and how much are actually essential activities that are coming from the pure inspiration flowing forth from my being, which is the only thing that I should be doing ever. The more we expand and the more we are prompted to step up to higher levels of expression by life, particularly in the case of those who are called to serve with our work, which I know many of you are, the more we have to expand our self-care. I find this such a bizarre thing to recognize, as it's the last thing one would necessarily think of logically. But the fact is that the bigger the task we are called to do, the more we need to put ourselves first and foremost in order to be able to do it effectively. I'm certain that sharing authentically benefits others, even when I'm not sure that anybody shares my experience. But I have the feeling that this will strike a chord with at least some who know in their hearts they are destined for very large purposes too. It does not serve anyone to pretend to be less than we are, or to try to stay in a less expanded state, so as to fit into what is comfortable for the majority. It is ironic that in order to set everyone free to soar on higher thermals, we sometimes have to break away from connections that we ultimately know we want to keep in some form, in trust that the true connection is inherent and not based on living out any kind of pattern. And then in another post she says, she did a rune reading, and she says, this is a beautiful rune from the incredibly powerful 8th field of perception, which further brings out the nuances of what was discussed in her post last night, about how even though life has changed around us, sometimes parts of us haven't fully caught up yet, or are still lingering in old habitual ways of functioning behind or beyond their time. And that's the rune number 28. Ukvretut is the angel, and the rune says, allowing the changing attitudes that result from the inevitable evolution of life. Folks, we've just been given permission to expand and live in the highest process that is possible for ourselves. Almin tells us we have now received the 384 principles of high magic. They have not come easily. I am reminded of the Norse myth that Odin crucified himself on a tree upside down in order to receive the Norse runes. That's the Seer Almin. Right, next up, Diane.
This is Radio Belvas-Patar, South Africa. We explore together the essential elements of our life journey, as well as the rest of creation, as all existence returns to its source. Each show discusses and prepares information about that process, which is referred to as ascension. The dictionary defines ascension as rising to a higher level or degree. We are using this term to describe the rise of consciousness of man and of the earth, because they are intertwined as they manifest their divine nature and purpose. While ascension is inevitable, individual choices determine its pace. We can be active participants, cooperating to the extent of growing availability. We can be passive, riding the coattails of those in the vanguard, or we can resist, delaying our progress and, to some extent, impeding others. But ascend we will. The pace and degree of pain and frustration is up to each of us. Ascension can be achieved through the heart or through the mind. The right brain method of ascension occurs through pure feelings of love, praise, and gratitude. The left brain method is accomplished through logic and mastering the mind. The goal of both methods is to allow the cells to fill with light and to vibrate at the frequency of eternal love. The light is masculine, which is electrical, and the love is feminine, which is magnetic. The balance of the two allows the glory of the infinite to emerge. Love is the core ingredient in both methods, but it comes through the ascension attitudes to those who are right brain dominant. Left brain oriented people are just as capable of divine love, but they generally use logic and reasoning. They access the love within by expanding their perception, enabling them to see behind fear and then release it. When fear dissolves, only love remains. Many people are very much in touch with their feelings. They aren't logically inclined and so don't question what they feel. They function primarily from the right brain and find it natural to be immersed in the three ascension attitudes of love, praise, and gratitude. This is the feminine approach. If we live continually in the pure vibration of any one of these attitudes for a few months, we change from mortal to immortal, becoming an ascended master in the flesh. This occurs because love, praise, and gratitude are attitudes indicating that we have chosen life. They signal the maturity gland to order the thymus to excrete the life hormone, so our cells are continually renewed. Each of these three ascension attitudes represent a color. For example, love is blue, praise is associated with yellow, gratitude is red, and when they are combined, it makes white light, the light of the infinite. These are the white garments of the saints spoken of in the scriptures, the white light emanating from their skin. Listen to Radio Belvaspatar South Africa show on a weekly basis. We will be sharing excerpts and teachings about these ascension attitudes, as well as other descriptions provided by the seer Almin. Radio Belvaspatar South Africa. Let's step into higher awareness, ascension, and cosmic change together as one. Cosmic Online Radio. Commit to your own ascension. May our hearts recognize the many levels of light these teachings impart. May you and I pull the earth into an era of hope and peace and lay the path to a new tomorrow. You are tuned to a higher frequency with Radio Belvaspatar South Africa. Let us live a life of fulfillment through love.
You're back in studio, and thank you to Diane for that excerpt from Almin's book, The Life of Miracles, introducing the teachings and miraculous healing modality we know as Belvaspatar. So, Almin gives us now a glimpse into the unfathomable, and that's 2018 it's unfathomable to me. Fantastic. She says that nothing has always existed in its present form. Now, how's that for a sense of paradoxical comment? She says, to seek for the origin of life is futile, since it has had no beginning. To seek for the source of the form life takes is to seek for the embodiment of the divine. A question was posed to the seer, and that was, has the cosmos, with its universes, had a beginning, or has it always existed in its present form? The seer responds and says, the endings and beginnings of all things are perpetually taking place simultaneously. This dynamic is called fluid change or perpetual flow. Nothing has always existed in its present form. Everything is forever new, and one form always changes to another, and so too the cosmos. Well, we understand that now, don't we? Beautifully explained, and of course we are able to perceive that particular huge question which has always existed for humanity. In the Secret Origins of the Holy Ones, which is the tablets of fire transmissions given by the Seer Al-Amin through discourses in the Moscow retreats in October 2017, which is available online, she says that we're at a crossroads in our evolution. What we choose will either create a graceful transition or a great loss of life as a purification amongst humanity. The tablets of fire indicate what we would have missed so that we can instead choose a graceful journey. This material that was interpreted and explained by the Seer Al-Amin is remarkable and life-changing. It shed light on the roots of humanity, the cause of the great fall of consciousness, and the planet Altair as a second home to the original ones, and many more answers that of course eluded us for ages. It's a priceless blessing on our journey. It sheds light on the feelings of displacement felt by us, the Holy Ones, and the causes of previous global cataclysms, including prophecies yet to come, and so much more. Very highly recommended to go with that. And then, of course, what we've got is a audio which is just loaded tonight up on Al-Amin Diary. It's called about genetic inbreeding, how man was distorted. And as you listen to this, you're going to be amazed because the questions that come up yet again are absolutely huge. Here we go.
Ushanus. There is no inner and outer space. There
excluding this time when they've come amongst man. Well, each of those 4 times when they came back, they found the earth so destroyed that it was uninhabitable for a very long time. I have seen visions of how the original ones repaired the earth. They did it with sacred geometry, which is the dynamic geometry that we write about in Journey to the Heart of God. Well, where were they coming from? Remember, they have a second home, which is Altair, a large planet that if we have a name for it, known on Earth, we don't. It's just a number. It's out in space. Well, each time they came back and found that yet again man had destroyed the Earth, they assumed that man had too much power and not enough awareness to match it. So the power was used destructively. So, as a result, they actually deliberately reduced man's abilities with each of the waves of creation, of which the current one is the 5th. So they decided to create the star races from man's 3rd creation. Now, that's kind of interesting because it does tell us that for a long time there were no star races, just man. And I think this is the deep memory that creates such a juvenile belief that we're the only race in the star systems. And until, photography and various other methods and group sightings showed that, listen, they are coming from other planets. For thousands of years, man thought he's the only race in the whole cosmos, because at one time he was. So the decision to create the star races from man's 3rd creation, but to use those star races, DNA, in creating the 4th creation of man, produced the exact same problems that genetic inbreeding does. And offspring of incest, of interfamily relations, they suffer from a loss of abilities and aggravated flaws. Many of man's very negative traits that we see today, and we wonder, how could they be like this, resulted from this. They're basically the children of incest. So why did these flaws, first of man, passed on to the star races, and then the star races pass it back on to man, and it is now very aggravated? There are several questions we could be asking, such as, well, why, if the original ones recreated man each time, why didn't they take these flaws out of there and create them more perfectly? Why, when the star races were created, did they not eliminate certain mistakes? Because we must firstly define what we mean by mistakes. We've often said there is no such thing as mistakes. We're just using the word here to describe something. What is it? Mistakes are the unique blind spots that an individual has that creates their unique perspective. What separates one bucket of water from the ocean from another bucket of water in the ocean is perspective. And this perspective comes from creating deliberate blind spots. So these were passed on so that individuation could be held. The reason that the flaws were passed from generation to generation of creations of humanity is because their templates were preserved. That which makes individuations within a wave of man, those templates were preserved. And those templates, they were formed by the mistakes. The individuations were formed by the mistakes. So there were deliberate blind spots written into those templates. So if you make subsequent generations of man and you keep their flaws, but now with the inbreeding from a third generation who inherited their form, their flaws, they're actually made bigger, but you give them less ability, so less perception to solve their flaws. Because we eliminate flaws through perception, but with less and less resources, they had less and less ability to do that. So basically, man deteriorated and deteriorated and deteriorated. Deep in this memory, that is part of his template, he remembered a time when he was the greatest race of all except for the original ones. But if you put memories of greatness into someone that has distorted vision, it becomes arrogance. Instead of power to cooperate with life, it becomes power to dominate life. So they have dominated the species, they've dominated the ecosystems, and they've dominated the planet with very bad results.
And there was the Seer Almin talking about the genetic inbreeding within humanity and the results that we are all living with today. Fascinating insights, and of course you may need to ponder on that a little bit, but for sure continue to do the work, and in a short while you'll understand more of it, because that's the way it goes. I'm fascinated when she talks about the blind spots within humanity, that we see that those are mistakes, and these are just gaps in our perspective. Well, I think one of my New Year processes is literally to dissolve those particular blind spots so that my perspective can grow. And of course, out of that perspective, one becomes more powerful in one's ability then to expand and create the process for oneself into deeper senses of ascension. But yeah, we mustn't forget that our goal this year, our work this year, is to uncover that which is unfathomable. And again, that's just an incredible paradox all by itself. But yeah, 2 years ago we entered the white light. This last year we entered into a world or beingness of high magic, and now we are living into a state of unfathomable being. I nearly said unfathomableness, but it's not a word. Anyway, now it is, because it's been spoken. Right, so let's move away right now from this process that we're going on about the timelines and moving and the feelings and the experiences that we're having and all the hard work, because sometimes we forget that we have done an amazing amount of work. And there's a reminder in the system for us. You'll remember earlier I asked you that, if you just regressed yourself a little bit, you went back into the past, if that was possible, and, your older self was looking at yourself now, and what would it think of you? And we said there at that point, I was saying that, it would look up to us. And I think it's time for us to just recognize where we are at. So congratulations to Cedar Rivers of, she's got her website, Clarity for Life. I saw today that it has reached 1 million hits in terms of the information she shared about where mankind is and these ascension symptoms and the awakening process that has gone on and what we've achieved. And she's writing there about what we can expect as we move our experiences from the higher realms, as we move from this expression of the Homo sapien into what is termed a Homo luminous being, and starting to actually just project that infinite expression more and more and more. So there's quite a few there, and you can go onto the website to look at it. And I'd like to just read a few out which are highlighted for me, and perhaps you'll see the 22 aspects on her website. You'll find a lot of closure there of the old, and you can carry a good open heart and know that the work that you've done is just absolutely profound. And the first one that she mentions in terms of these experiences, that we're moving into a better job that supports the expression of who we are, our passion or our mission, which are basically the same. Said where most of our dreams come true and easily. She says, as you further evolve, you reunite with your twin, who's a total reflection of you. And that's an interesting dynamic. Open for a lot of discussion one other evening on that. She says, being together is like being with yourself, and you feel a unity to source as never before. Then another point she brings up, and highlighting for me, you don't seem to care much about anything, and nothing seems to matter anymore, because you've evolved out of the old way of a being of drama and emotion. She's saying that you may have lost interest in the New Age arena, and you know that your needs are met and always will be. You no longer have the desire or need to make things happen or to try or to fix anything. You understand and practice allowing, acceptance, being, and intent. You can no longer relate to mental and analytical processes, and you now relate to feelings. You no longer care what anyone thinks about you or anything else. You understand too that there is no right or wrong, good or bad, black or white. Everything just is. In fact, you realize up is down, left is right, right is wrong. You finally realize that there's no dark, there's only light. And the appearance of lack of light is simply to provide a contrast, to spur us onwards to creating what feels really good for ourselves. All energy is always going in the same direction, which is supporting the light. You've lost your desire to read books or gather any further news information, as you are now much more connected to source, and you can gather it directly by being, feeling, and knowing. Making sense? Your health improves and you experience a miracle-like healing of a long-standing physical ailment. So some of you have been sharing some of that with me, something to look forward to, and I suggest is that one gives oneself permission to allow it to happen. You begin to experience a flow of life at a much slower, leisurely pace. Well, I'm working on that one, where you need not do anything you do not really wish to do. Everything begins to fall into your lap. You only desire to do what is yours to do, and you no longer have a life full of mundane responsibilities. When much releasing has been completed, you are then left with a purified you. This is your contribution to the new world as what is being described by her as a gold nugget of our divine expression. You also easily pick up thoughts, feelings, desires, needs of others as you're becoming more and more empathetic and telepathic. You can control your emotions, your experiences, and create your world with your mind and intent without doubt or fear. Your surrounding environment has little effect on you. You don't take time or things personally. Nothing is really worth getting that upset about. Okay, so for me that's work in action still, but it's happening. You have an unquenchable thirst for creativity. The enormous amount of energy running through you demands an outlet. You feel most at home and in alignment with Source when you're in your passion and in your state of creativity. You have a heightened love and compassion for all living things. You're also experiencing higher states and more frequent states of love and joy. You live in the moment without the need for a day planner. Things just naturally unfold day by day and moment by moment. All stress will go. You feel incredible peace at times. There is a distinct absence of fear and you feel safe. Your inner child seems to have disappeared, which was relating to issues and wounds. Although you love to play and frolic, much of the time you just want to play, and go and have some fun and enjoy yourself. And then you begin to have an understanding about how everything is connected. You understand that there are no mistakes. Absolutely incredible. You can get the rest of it on Clarity for Life, which is Cedar River's website, and I thank her for allowing us, just to put it up here in terms of it's now out in the public, and I just thought absolutely incredible just for us to identify that these are the processes that we are experiencing, and even if you don't agree fully with it, know that those things are manifesting for you individually in your own time and as your own perspective allows it. So it's time for some meditation now with the Sia Almin. We're going to play the 384 Principles of High Magic, just the excerpt of that is available to us. Some of you may have bought the whole program, the whole experience from spiritualjourneys.com. If so, enjoy it. But we are allowed, publicly just to play this particular aspect. Remember earlier what I said, what Almin said is about that these processes have not come easily for us. And no, definitely not. So congratulations on doing that work, everyone. Let's spend just the next few minutes listening to the 384 Principles of High Magic. Close your eyes if you're able to, rest for a while and enjoy. I'll see you on the other side of this.
Ushanus. There is no inner and outer space. There is only inner space that is being externally experienced. Kuvu Asvatar. The past times of simplicity are valued for their seeming predictability. But hindsight makes the past appear predictable. We can only value them when we are beyond those times. The heart wishes to return to such times because it does not remember the pain of stagnation that, like a little fish caught in a tidal pool, compelled us to return to the unpredictable ocean of life. Kiri Nastu. When the sense of belonging that tribalism gives prevents its members from wanting to develop beyond the tribe's uniformity, perversion results. Not able to move beyond the boundaries that define the tribe, they seek instead to breach the boundaries of the social conduct the tribe is built upon. To avoid rejection, this often creates duplicity. Uple Uvasta. The heart or other body organs are tools for certain functions. They have a special role in the body, but are not separate from the body. All external tools are not separate from your being. All you can ever encounter in your reality is yourself. Huklahet. If you are manifesting inept assistance from others, it is because you consider the body as a flawed instrument, separate from yourself. It is an integral part of and responds to emotions. But emotions can be polluted by negative thoughts, which then indirectly affect the body. Kirchpater. From rejection and feeling flawed, the body manifests illness and injury. All feelings of physical unworthiness come from comparing ourselves to external sources. But as the source of our reality, we are the sovereign standard of excellence. To try and change ourselves according to external standards is like trying to look like our image in a distorted mirror. Luvanesvi. To enter a life of high magic isn't something you do. It is the natural state of an advanced expression of life. It effortlessly flows through you to affect your environment miraculously.
And there we were listening to the 384 Principles of High Magic, or at least we were listening to an excerpt from it, and a beautiful, absolute process going on there. That's available on YouTube if you want it, and you can listen to more, or just take this part of the show and begin to work with it. Really incredible depth that is going on. I mean, such gratitude for these experiences. And really, I'm just looking at this whole process. And I hope tonight that, as you've listened to us and worked with us, whether it's live tonight or in podcast form during the week that's coming, that you've taken some benefit, that we've been able to share with you where we're at. And again, just going back to that process of we're experiencing these things and you're experiencing them. These are all meaningful, and we need to look at it without letting us pull us down, and just allow it to propel us into this next experience. Almin was talking about stepping stones earlier last week, really, on Almin Diary, and talking about the stepping stones of life and how things unfold. And we were discussing it last week. So just to leave with you another image, it feels like sometimes we're in this typical movie of riding on a high-speed train that's got several carriages, and it's out of control, and it's about to crash over, and the wind and the hail, and it's just really graphic, that whole process of storm and intensity and trauma and drama as we're hurtling down this track of life. And we said last year that at one point it feels like we stepped out of one carriage, in between the carriages into the open air. We closed the one door behind us, but the next door hadn't yet opened. And I'm feeling at this moment that we've opened that door. We're just stepping into that next carriage there, and we'll close that door behind us, and it'll be a completely different experience altogether for all of us. And I think we just owe it for ourselves just to stand in the truth of this moment of where we're at and allow that to unfold with courage. We're not alone. We're all together, and we hope that our radio show tonight has inspired you to continue that work, to be with us week to week. We'll be back every single Thursday, and we'll be revamping sometimes the image or look of the show as we're going along. But at the end of the day, the core principles are the same. Let us live in love, praise and gratitude and trust. The Seer Almin tells us, and this is just our goodbye, thought pulls us out of the moment into the past or future. It disturbs innocence, since innocence is only found in the moment. And I hope that describes what the journey is ahead. We've done mind the gap, watch the gap, don't get caught in it, step into the new carriage, close the door behind you with firm conviction, and look to the horizon, because huge shifts and changes are happening. It's no longer still going to happen, they are happening, and it is our job just to hold that particular process in place and be in oneness with all of that. That's it for tonight. Thank you to Nico for hosting the sound board there, and our signal was good. It looks like we had a clear run all the way through, and fantastic going. World out there, thank you for listening, thank you for being part of our show, and thank you for allowing us to be able to broadcast this to each one of you. Send us messages if you like to info@belvaspata.co.za, and here on Spreaker.com there's also a chat box so you can put a few comments there. We want to hear from you, so mind the gap, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. Thank you for listening and sharing in our discussion. Should you have any questions with regards to the healing modality of Belvaspata or have any healing needs, please send us an email to info@belvaspata.co.za or add comments to our page on Spreaker.com so we can work on providing a suitable response. We now close this episode with the eternal ascension qualities of love, praise, gratitude and trust, and look forward to sharing again with you next week. Goodbye.